views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, we go front and center with part 2 on our special of human trafficking. We want to let you know exactly what to watch out for, what are the warning signs, and how you can play a part in solving a problem that's affecting not just our state, but our nation.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Let 'em know. Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let 'em know.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Darren Hyman. Of course, we thank you for watching as we are now entering season number 15 of the show. We continue to bring you news, information, and the things that you need to know. Now, if you want to check us out on Perspectives, you know we are here on BronxNet's Channel 67, Verizon Fios Channel 33, and anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You're also encouraged to check us out on our social networking sites, both Twitter as well as Facebook. Hit me up on my personal page, or I should say my professional page, Darren C. Hyme, and you can find out about what's on my mind. And we'll continue to let you know the things that we feel are very important. On this show, a very important topic, we continue with part 2 of our very special series talking about human trafficking. For many people, don't even know that millions of dollars are being spent, almost getting to the billions of dollars are being spent in the area of human trafficking. And while you may think it's an international problem, no, right here in our state, New York State, sees a lot of trafficking. And so our guest in studio is one who has studied it, one who has researched it, one who's actually talked to those who've been victims of human trafficking. She's here now to give us some insight as well as some information as to what you can watch out for. We're pleased to have Kampalia Thunderbird back for part 2. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Glad to have you back. And obviously the need is very great in our state to talk about this. And being the fact that you spent so much time researching it, we want to get you to share with some of our viewers a little bit more in this area. And so we talk about human trafficking, New York State. We hear about it internationally,
Yeah.
but let's just focus on New York State for a minute. How big and how prevalent are we seeing things here?
I think it is quite prevalent. You have some girls as young as 13 who are being sexually exploited. I think some of the definite signs, as we had talked earlier, one is the older boyfriend, 2, the need to have valuable items, valuable things that maybe they feel they can't afford themselves or their families will not purchase for them. And that truly does lead someone down that road, because eventually you will have to pay back this pimp, and it is going to be through your body. What I've also recognized is upstate New York is not exempt. There are definitely issues upstate New York. What I've come to find in my research and questioning some of the women who have been exploited, it's nothing new. You have people even through the crack era in the 80s who were trafficked from New York City up to upstate New York. But again, a lot of this information was not reported by the press. We would focus mostly on, the war on drugs. But that war on drugs has an iceberg. Underneath that war on drugs was also human trafficking in the 80s, from New York City to upstate New York. You never hear anything about it.
So people were being trafficked out of here,
Right.
taken upstate,
Yep.
and then from upstate, where do they go?
Upstate you work. Upstate, a lot of the women had to work. They had to work off their parents' debt from buying and using drugs that they couldn't pay for.
Wow. And so when we're talking about a price tag, what kind of price tag are they talking about working off?
I don't know the dollar amount, but some of them stayed. I mean, so it may have, some of them stayed up there for 10, 15 years, but I don't want to say the exact dollar
Right.
amount because I don't know.
Well, when you talk about awareness, I mean, this is a huge problem right here in
Yeah.
our state, but yet and still we don't talk about it too much. Why is it so quiet? Why is it so dormant amongst the state?
You know, it could be for several different reasons. Again, I honestly think it's because 90% of the people that are being exploited are African American or Latino Americans. I mean, you have a lot of people talking about sexual exploitation and human trafficking, but who do they focus on? It's not necessarily the Black or Latino community. And I think that's one of the reasons why it has been so quiet. I think it's time for these communities to understand, to raise awareness among themselves and get the word out there. You can't just wait for mainstream media to discuss it. We need to start discussing this.
And you worked in mainstream media. You were with the Progressive Radio Network. Stop that. All of a sudden, now you spend time researching. You spent 3.5
Yeah.
years out there in Thailand and another 1.5 years. Give us, what was your passion behind wanting to do this?
When I was on Progressive Radio Network, it was long before internet radio took off, but I had a phenomenal time because it was my own show, and I had the leeway, so to say, to create my own programming. In doing so, what I realized that there was just a dearth of information in regards to women's issues, and we talked about, you know, sometimes mainstream media not having the funding to really do those social justice research. So I started to do it every year in the month of March for Women's Month. And what I realized, there were so many organizations out there that were willing to speak out candidly on what was affecting women, either nationally, locally, or internationally. I was grateful for the ones that would speak out against the UN and the government. I said, wow, you know, there are actually women out here that want to do this. And what I realized in working with them was that there was so much more work to be done. And that has changed my life completely. In just working with those organizations and interviewing them, I realized there's another battle to fight.
So you spent 3.5 years in Thailand. What exactly did you do?
So the main purpose of me going there was really to research this topic. I had read that book, Disposable People by Kevin Bales, and I really wanted to understand human trafficking. I really wanted to understand how women were being affected. And what I didn't realize was that there were so many African women being trafficked into Thailand. I went there specifically because I thought the nationals there were being affected, and they are. But what I found amazing was the countless women that were being brought there on a yearly basis, on a monthly basis, and nothing was truly being done. There were only a few organizations that were willing to help the international women who were trafficked there. And I said, this is absurd. You have women coming in with, like I said, 2.5 million baht in debt bondage straight off the bat, but what is being done? And I just decided that some of us, not just me, but there's an army of us out there that's just decided to be a voice for the voiceless.
And here you are. And so be that voice for the voiceless. There's a parent out there that's watching. There's somebody out there that's watching locally. We talked about this being prevalent in New York State.
Yeah.
What should a mother, a father be looking for in this particular area?
Well, we talked about the older boyfriend, most definitely. We talked about friends, understanding who their friends are, understanding who they're connected with. The schools also need to be involved as well. So we can talk about the parents, but schools also need to have this point of awareness as well, as far as who's interacting on the school grounds. It can't just be policing kids, but having them have a better understanding of who they're coming in contact with and why this older person may want to be in connection with them. Also having an understanding that if this young gentleman is suddenly buying you gifts, I mean, what does he truly want after that? I mean, and really understanding what his role might play in you. Having a definite self-esteem about your body and who you are as a young girl. It should not start at 25. It should not start at 40. It needs to start at 15. It needs to start at 13. That this is my body and I decide what I will and will not do with it. And that's something that has to be taught at home, but also in the schools.
I remember, I actually posted on my Facebook page, there was a young man and he was a father, and he talks about how active he is in his child's life, and he's very strict. He's very, attentive to his, to his daughter, on the phone, on the computer, doing that.
Right.
And actually had to follow something through, only to find out that his daughter was actually in the process of being trafficked. And he felt like, here I am, this guy that's really active in my daughter's life,
Right.
doing all the necessary homework, but yet and still my daughter gets picked off. It's very easy to happen.
It is. It's easy to happen also on the internet. There's a lot of young people, they spend so many hours and so much time on the internet. There could be people posting as a 15-year-old, but it's really a 45-year-old. How do you truly know? There's so many signs to look out for, and that's why I constantly say when it comes to mentoring young girls, it cannot just be policing them. It has to be those innate skills that are built within them for self-confidence, for knowing thyself, and that's a longer process. It's not going to happen in a year. It may not happen in 2 years, but it's a process to understand that. We also have to include the young boys. How do we really retrain young boys to think about sexuality? How do we retrain them to think about young girls, to think about women? So it has to be a cohesive process, and it also has to be the schools involved. I'm sorry to hear that, but I remember having a student years ago who was, bless her heart, brilliant young girl who was 13, who bluntly told me she has a 25-year-old boyfriend online. Wow. And I said, you do understand he's too old for you. So she changed it. She said, teacher, oh, well, okay, he's only 19. But it's understanding who they're connected to online as well.
Right. Got to take a quick break, come back with more with Kampalia in just a few seconds. Stay with us. You're watching Perspectives as we address the issue of human trafficking.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Back here on Perspectives, we're continuing our conversation going front and center with the issue of human trafficking. Our guest, Kampalia Thunderbird, who's been sharing with us a little bit of her story. She went over to Thailand, researched the human trafficking industry for about 3.5 years, and talks about it from an international perspective as well as from a local perspective. Right here in New York State, as we said, we've got a huge issue with trafficking going from the city to upstate, huh?
Mm-hmm. The city to upstate.
It's a pipeline.
It's a pipeline. It is a pipeline, and a lot of people don't want to discuss this. Within New York City, like I said, you have girls as young as 13, 15 who will experience sexual exploitation. Harlem, Brooklyn, you know, Queens, the Bronx. It's in all of the boroughs, but we don't recognize it. We don't see the signs, and I think we're too quick to judge young girls when we see them at the corner and not fully understand the predicament that they're going through, not fully understand the reasons why they're at that street corner. We're too quick to judge.
You talk a little bit about being a voice for the voiceless. When you have these young ladies out there, somebody's got to speak up on behalf of them. And you spend a lot of time talking to audiences and letting people know exactly about this. I want to talk about the reaction. What's the reaction amongst elected officials when you talk about human trafficking? Are they sympathetic, apathetic? How do they flow? I didn't call them out by name, so you can.
Well, the interesting thing is elected officials don't show up to any of my lectures. I've had the great pleasure to talk to a lot of students, whether it's middle school or some universities, and outstanding. They are just outstanding students because they want to learn more. Surprisingly enough, the middle schools that I've spoken to want the knowledge. They want the awareness, whether it's local or international. They want to know what they can do to help their brothers and sisters, regardless of skin color. I find the middle schools the most blessed students that I've ever spoken with. I find some colleges who definitely want to seep their fingertips into this. They want to understand why this is going on. So I think the youth definitely want an understanding. I think it's some of us older adults and some elected officials that really need to speak up and out on this issue.
It's so hard to really think that this is happening right up under our noses, and yet and still it occurs under our noses. Give me a little bit from the perspective of parents. What do you hear when you converse with parents about this? Because they're the first line of defense in many ways. Is there an apathy there? Is there an understanding that, listen, not do I only have to worry about my child on the street, I have to worry about my child literally being on the streets?
That's such a good question. I feel in the moment that they hear the talks or they listen to BronxNet that there's definitely a need to gain this knowledge. But after, I don't know what the effects are. And I think that's the issue, the follow through. I think you can connect with a person. I think that you can speak all you want to a person. And in that moment, they may have the fire. But a month later, 2 months later, when life steps in, are they still willing to raise that awareness with a relative or a friend down the road? I think that's the issue. What do we do with the knowledge we have?
We know what you've done. What are you doing now, and what's going on with you now in terms of bringing that knowledge and awareness out? What can we see?
Definitely, I'm working on a play. It will be vignettes of different women around the globe who are facing human trafficking and sexual exploitation, whether it's in Haiti, right here in New York City, whether it's on the continent. So just vignettes of women who speak out and share their experiences. I think one thing is the transformative power of the arts. I think it's one thing to listen to a lecture, but when you actually have to sit in a theater space and feel what these women are going through, it brings about a different level of awareness.
And so we can expect to see those things. You have our information at the bottom of the screen. Of course, we invite you to stay connected and find out more about this issue of human trafficking on both a national and international play. The money that's involved. For somebody that's out there that wants to know a little bit more about it, this is millions and billions.
Millions and billions for sure. You're talking about millions locally, you're talking about millions internationally. You're talking about people who literally go on vacation just for sex. You're talking about people who travel from state to certain particular areas just for sex. And I really believe that we have to re-educate men as well as women on who's being affected, who you're buying. You know, the age. Just because someone tells you they're 18 and shows you a card that they're 18 does not mean that they're 18. And even if she is 18 and you're 59, are you okay with that? Are you truly okay with that, considering the fact that could be your granddaughter?
Male buy-in to this, when you're speaking, what's the response? What's the buy-in? Are you getting that, or is there a lot of resistance? Because, you know, we do carry some testosterone with us that can be a blocking agent sometimes just to even receive that. So what do you get?
In my talks, I've been truly surprised. The men show up and they're interested. The men show up and they want to know more. The men show up and they want to understand why this is happening in their community. But they also are honest with me and say that if they sat in one of my talks 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that they would not have an interest because their mindset wasn't there. So I thank them for their honesty, but I also believe that the ones that can show up, the ones that can listen, have to spread the message, that they also have to be an agent for re-educating the youth.
I think if a father has a daughter,
yes,
I think that should be an immediate lock to say, listen, that could be my, I mean, I have a son, of course, so I think when I look at things and I see a Trayvon Martin or I see a Mike Brown, I say, you know, that could be my son. Is that almost like the automatic default that you find amongst men when you talk about this issue with young girls?
Sometimes. If they are parents, sometimes they automatically want to understand how they can safeguard their daughter or their nieces, most definitely. But again, the education has to start at home, but it must extend outside into the community. It's a huge issue because so many young girls don't have fathers. There's so many young boys who don't have fathers. And I know that, you know, our own lives can take up so much time, but if we have the extra 5 minutes, if we have the extra 10 minutes to speak to Maybelle down the road, we need to do that.
Do you get a sense of, oh, here comes Kampaya talking about this. This could never happen to me?
To be honest with you, no. I've never gotten the sense that it could never happen to me. I've always gotten the sense of how do we raise awareness? Why is this occurring? And I have no knowledge of it. Why is it occurring and the mainstream media is not reporting it about my community? Why aren't we talking about it within our communities? There's always a sense of urgency.
All right, take a quick break and come back with more with Kampaya Thunderbird talking about human trafficking. Be back in just a few.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Hey, did you know 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Let's go to the shelterpetproject.org and meet if you are in a shelter near you. Harlow, oh, she's one great listener and loves to hear all your stories. My kind of cat. Cerulo is a sweet, goofy boy who's eager to please. Sounds just like another dog I know. So go to the shelterpetproject.org, search your local shelters and rescues, and go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
Back here, continuing our conversation on human trafficking, our guest, Kampaya Thunderbird. This is part 2 of our series where we've been talking about this issue because it's very serious, particularly here in New York State. And the numbers continue to rise, and we're trying to raise an awareness here for parents, for community, for people to know that this issue is prevalent. I got off the plane today, and I got a guy who stopped me and he said, you know, he asked me what my show was about. And I talked to him a little bit about this. And as he talked about it, he said to me, he said, man, it's hard to believe that people are being taken away from us and the reaction is not there. Yeah. I thought about that as I was driving in. I said, you know, we heard a lot about Boko Haram.
Yes.
And you saw a great amount of people talk about bring our girls back, bring our girls back.
Yes.
Even went to Washington, the Obamas bring our girls back. But all of a sudden, it seemed like it just faded away and nothing was done. How do we land there?
If it definitely faded away in the States, it doesn't mean it faded away in Nigeria. From the people that I spoke to, I mean, they definitely kept up the fire on Boko Haram. So that's one thing to recognize as well. And number two, I think we need some of that fire at home when it comes to our own people, you know, missing. We need that fire, but how often do you hear about young girls or young boys going missing? I mean, again, when we only look to mainstream media for our information, when people go missing, the people that get all of the attention are usually white girls and white boys. You don't get all of that attention for Black and Latino kids. So how can we develop a community that understands, okay, if this person is missing and they're from the Bronx, they're from different boroughs and they are African American, they are Latino, how can we truly spread the word around and keep it up long term that this person is missing, bring back our girls and our boys? I think we need to start looking at different levels of awareness.
And the awareness continues. Where can people go to find out more information with regards to awareness and knowing and arming themselves for this, you know, very serious matter?
The Global Slavery Index, you can find that online. It gives you information continent to continent, including United States of America. They give you detailed statistics on human trafficking, detailed. There's a few organizations here in New York, upstate. You have My Sister's Place that also helps women and young girls who have been trafficked and domestic violence. You have Safe House LI, they're out in Long Island. I don't know all of these organizations personally, but I've done a little bit of research on them, and they seem to be legitimate places for people who have suffered these traumatic experiences. Again, the book Kevin Bales, Disposable People, I will be coming out with a website as well to give people more up-to-date information.
Well, certainly we want to continue to get that information because it's something that the conversation has to continue.
Yeah.
And the good news is, like here, places like here and this show, we can continue to talk about it for weeks and literally for weeks. And we just don't have to let an issue die. We can really continue to let our viewers know about it. But thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
taking the
Thank
time
you.
out and letting us know about this issue of human trafficking. Compiled Thunderbird, thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, listen, we want you to stay connected to us here at Perspectives. Of course, we will get you that information and anything that you need to know with regards to that. Just, you know, check on the bottom of the screen and stay connected to us here at the show. We'll be glad to get you that because, as we said, it's going on in New York State, right here in the 5 boroughs of New York City, all the way up to upstate. Trafficking is going on, and so parents and communities, we need you to be aware. And so continue to watch us here on Perspectives, and we'll share this information with you. That about wraps it up for this edition. It's part 2 of a very special series on human trafficking. We thank you for watching. We encourage you to stay connected to us here. For all of us on the set of Perspectives, I'm Darren Jaime. Thanks for watching, and God bless.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat?
1 in 5 children struggles with hunger in America. Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Live with a human for a while, and you get to know a few things. Like, I know